In geopolitics, as in human to human interactions, whenever a conflict breaks out within two parties, it is almost never the case that one side is completely right and the other side is completely wrong. Hence, in the US China geopolitical contest, China has made mistakes too. There are at least three clear mistakes China made. The first mistake was to alienate the American business community, a major mistake. In previous decades, whenever an American administration wanted to take action against China, the business community would object. When President Bill Clinton tried to tie the renewal of China's MFN status to human rights issues in 1993, the New York Times reported that, quote, many American companies vigorously lobbied the White House and Congress for an extension of China's trading privileges, pointing out that billions of dollars in exports are at stake, as well as thousands of jobs, unquote. It was natural for the American business community to protest against actions taken against China, as they were making huge profits from the Chinese market. Here are two examples. Boeing has sold over 2,000 planes to China. Its revenue from China has soared tenfold from $1.2 billion in 1993 to $11.9 billion in 2017. Boeing's success is not surprising. It is globally competitive. By contrast, American automakers are not globally competitive. Yet CNN reported on February 7, 2017, quote, China is now GM's largest market. Sales growth there lifted it to volume it's never achieved when it was the world's biggest automaker. The record sales last year lifted GM to a record operating profit of $12.5 billion, up 16%. Only 7 years ago, GM suffered through a federal bailout and bankruptcy, unquote. Therefore, when President Trump launched a trade war against China in 2017, the American business community, which had made massive profits in China, should have objected. Instead, they remained completely silent. Clearly, the Chinese government had made serious mistakes in its management of the American business community. The causes of their unhappiness have been publicly documented. The American Chamber of Commerce, in Shanghai's 2018 China Business Report, said, quote, survey takers believe Chinese government policies favor local companies. 60% reported that China's regulatory environment lacks transparency, no improvement on last year, and lack of intellectual property protection and enforcement, obtaining required licenses, and data security and protection of commercial secrets remain top regulatory hindrances, unquote. It added, quote, recent US-China trade frictions have shined a light on many of the imbalances in the trading relationship, including, but not limited to, a lack of reciprocity in cross-border investment, China's use of state-funded industrial policies, and pressure to transfer technology as the price to pay to participate in China's market, unquote. Such unfriendly moves against foreign companies could have been the result of local and provincial initiatives. A well-known Chinese saying is, the mountains are high and the emperor is far away. For millennia, the provinces of China, even under strong emperors, have always enjoyed strong local autonomy. However, the second big mistake was clearly made at the central level. After the 2008-2009 financial crisis rocked America and seemed to bring the American economy down to its knees, Chinese officials became arrogant and condescending towards America. This arrogance was further enhanced when American Treasury officials went to Beijing in 2008 to appeal to Chinese government officials to continue buying US Treasury bills. This arrogance was even displayed at public settings. In his book, The Party, Richard McGregor described what happened at the 2009 Boao Forum, China's equivalent of the annual Davos meeting. He said, quote, "One by one, at the 2009 Boao Forum, senior Chinese officials tossed aside the soothing messages of past conferences to drive this reversal of fortune home. The first, a financial regulator, lambasted a recent meeting of global leaders as lip service. Another tore into the role of international ratings agencies in the financial crisis. A retired Politburo member ominously suggested that the US needed to make sure that it protect the interests of Asian countries if it wanted China to keep buying its debt." Unquote. Such public displays of arrogance clearly went against the wise advice given by Deng Xiaoping, who advocated modesty and humility as China rules. The third mistake was not an act of commission. It was an act of omission. When China joined WTO in 2001, it fully deserved admission as a developing country member. Then its per capita income was $2,900 US dollars in purchasing power parity or PPP in 2000, similar to that of developing countries like Pakistan, Bhutan, and Yemen. By 2015, its per capita income had grown to US $14,400. In the same period, China's economy also went from being the sixth largest to the second largest in the world. As China's economy became much bigger, it would have been wiser for China to unilaterally give up some of its WTO concessions. By not doing so, China alienated some of its best friends in America. One of them is Hank Paulson, a former US Treasury Secretary. In an anguished speech he gave at a conference in Singapore in November 2018, he explained well the international disappointment with China hiding behind WTO rules that were meant for poor developing countries. He said, quote, 17 years after China entered the WTO, China still has not opened its economy to foreign competition in so many areas. It retains joint venture requirements and ownership limits, and it uses technical standards, subsidies, licensing procedures, and regulation as non-tariff barriers to trade and investment. Nearly 20 years after entering the WTO, this is simply unacceptable. It is why the Trump administration has argued that the WTO system needs to be modernized and changed, and I agree. Unquote. All these examples illustrate how China made serious mistakes in its management of America's business community. As a result, China found itself to be almost friendless in America when President Donald Trump launched his trade war against China. Professor Susan Shirk, one of America's most prominent sinologists, observed in February 2019 that, quote, with US and China at the precipice of a truly adversarial relationship, no group has really stepped forward to defend US-China relations, much less defend China. Not businesses, not China scholars, and certainly no one in Congress, unquote. This is why it will be wise for the leaders of Beijing to also reflect seriously on what they have done to trigger this geopolitical contest.